Picture this. Your floor cleans itself while you sleep. Your watch silently monitors your heart through the night without a single notification disturbing you. Your desk manages your schedule without a single app open. None of this is a vision board. None of it is a prototype sitting behind glass at a trade show. Every device in that scene is real, available, and already sitting on someone's desk or wrist or kitchen counter right now. Most of them ship from Amazon in 2 days. The rule for this list was simple and strict. Every gadget had to clearly save time, reduce mental load, or remove a repetitive task from the week. If it was just a novelty, it was cut. What survived is a list that genuinely changes how a day feels. Not just what a day looks like. Prices move constantly, so treat every figure mentioned here as a reference point rather than a guarantee. Stay through number 1. It is the gadget that makes the most mundane part of home routine almost completely invisible. Number 20. The Philips Sonicare Prestige 9900. At around $230, this is a toothbrush that thinks. Not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet, useful way that makes every other toothbrush feel like a blunt instrument by comparison. The Prestige 9900 uses pressure sensors and motion tracking to monitor brushing in real time, automatically adjusting intensity when pressure gets too hard, and tracking which zones get rushed through every morning without the person using it ever realizing it. The phone habit it eliminates is the one where you assume you are brushing fine, then the dentist says otherwise, and you have no idea why. Sonicare removes that guesswork entirely. It handles the thinking about pressure and coverage that most people never consciously do, every time, without waiting for a reminder. It is the smallest item on this list and a demonstration of something important. A gadget does not have to be visible to be intelligent. Sometimes the most useful AI in your life is the one handling something you would rather not think about at all. Number 19. The Abodo Globot. Somewhere between $80 and $150. This is a small tabletop companion robot designed to reduce the reflex of reaching for a phone between tasks. It reacts to voice, displays expressions through an animated digital face, and functions as a physical notification hub and ambient assistant that gives idle moments somewhere to land other than a scroll feed. The habit it replaces is constant. The reflex reach for a phone during any gap in attention, any quiet minute between calls, any moment of mild boredom that pulls toward a glowing screen. Globot offers that same quick interaction through something physical and present in the room rather than a rectangle that always leads somewhere else. It also happens to be the gadget on this list that looks most like something from a children's science fiction story while behaving most like something a production designer dreamed up for a film set in the near future. The resemblance is clearly intentional. The function is entirely real. Number 18. The Nartic AI Calendar. Priced in the range of $150 to $250, the Nartic is a physical smart calendar that syncs with an existing digital schedule and surfaces deadlines, tasks, and reminders visually. As a surface mounted on a wall or sitting on a desk, rather than buried inside an app that requires unlocking and opening before any of that information becomes visible. For people who work from home or manage complex schedules, this replaces the cognitive overhead of holding a week's worth of commitments in working memory just to navigate a single day. The Nartic puts that information into the environment so it is always visible, always current, and never requires a phone unlock to access. It is a genuinely underrated category. The value is not in any single feature. It is in what disappears when you stop forgetting things. The low-grade background stress of wondering what is coming next. Number 17. The CUNYflow AI Notebook. At roughly $100 to $200, the CUNYflow is a smart notebook that bridges handwritten notes and digital organization automatically. Write by hand, and the notebook captures, structures, and syncs those ideas into a searchable digital system without any manual transfer. The handwriting happens on real paper. The organization happens without you. The phone task it replaces is the dead end of every note-taking app. The moment a voice memo or handwritten list sits in a folder and never becomes actionable because processing it is just enough friction to skip indefinitely. CUNYflow collapses that step entirely. The note is already organized by the time the pen lifts. For people who think better on paper but live inside digital tools, This gadget stops the two systems from working against each other and makes both coexist without any translator standing between them. Number 16. The HiDock P1 Mini. Priced at around $150 to $200, the HiDock P1 Mini is a compact audio dock that makes every call and online meeting clearer and easier to review afterward. It combines a speakerphone with active noise reduction and built-in AI meeting summaries that capture what was said and pull out the key points, so the meeting becomes a document rather than a memory. For remote workers and anyone whose week runs on back-to-back video calls, this replaces the cycle of muted microphones, echoey audio, and half-remembered action items that require a follow-up message to track down. The P1 Mini handles audio quality automatically and produces a record of the conversation without anyone typing a word while the call is still happening. Being fully present on a call instead of half present because one hand is furiously taking notes is a small improvement that compounds meaningfully across a week of heavy meetings. Number 15. The Ringcon Gen 2 Air. Somewhere between $199 and $299, this smart ring tracks heart rate, blood oxygen, respiratory rate, skin temperature, and sleep architecture continuously, without a screen, without notifications interrupting the day, and without the daily charging cycle that makes most smartwatches feel like another device that needs managing. The habit it replaces is the morning health dashboard check, opening an app to review sleep quality and resting heart rate, then trying to decide whether the numbers mean anything. Ringcon builds a physiological baseline over weeks and flags meaningful changes quietly, so the data only needs attention when something is actually worth noticing. Nobody looking at the ring would guess what it is doing. It looks like jewelry. It reads like a clinical grade monitor. That combination is what puts it on this list rather than in a medical supply catalog. Number 14. The Withings ScanWatch 2. At around $300 and up, ScanWatch 2 looks like a conventional analog watch. A small display sits discreetly inside the dial rather than dominating the face. Underneath that classic exterior lives an egg sensor, a blood oxygen monitor, continuous temperature tracking, and sleep analysis detailed enough to flag irregularities most people would never notice on their own. The phone task it replaces is the health app itself and all the friction of remembering to check it. ScanWatch 2 runs monitoring passively, without asking for attention, and surfaces alerts only when they are worth surfacing. For people who want serious health tracking without wearing something that reads as a tech product, this is the most elegant solution available right now. The contrast is the whole point. A watch face that looks like it belongs in a shop window from 50 years ago, running sensor technology that would have seemed implausible 10 years ago. Number 13. The Whoop 5.0. At around $18 a month with a subscription, Whoop 5.0 is a screenless fitness band that skips step counting and calorie estimates, focusing instead on two specific numbers: recovery score and strain score. Recovery tells you how prepared the body is for effort today. Strain tells you how hard it was pushed yesterday. Together, they answer the question most people have to guess at: how hard should I actually push myself right now? The habit it replaces is the guessing game most people play when deciding whether to train hard or take it easy. A guess usually made on the basis of how they feel subjectively rather than what the body is actually doing physiologically. Whoop replaces that uncertainty with a specific number, updated every single day. For anyone whose performance matters, whether in a gym, on a field, or in a work week that requires sustained mental output, this is one of the few gadgets on this list that delivers information genuinely unavailable from willpower alone. Number 12. The Ultra Human Ring Air Pro. Priced between roughly $350 and $450, the Ultra Human Ring Air Pro focuses on metabolic health and performance coaching, giving clearer and more actionable guidance on food timing, recovery windows, and training load than the broad wellness metrics most rings and watches report. For people who train seriously or manage demanding schedules, this replaces the overwhelming raw health data most wearables produce. Numbers that look meaningful but rarely tell you what to actually do differently. UltraHuman translates that data into specific coaching. Not just a low HRV reading, but a concrete recommendation about how to adjust today based on what the data actually shows. For anyone who acts on wearable data, that shift from raw numbers to specific guidance is the difference between a gadget that gets checked and a gadget that actually changes behavior. Number 11. The Oura Ring 4. Priced at around $299 to $499 depending on finish, the Oura Ring 4 is a discreet smart ring that tracks sleep quality, daily readiness, and physical strain, then distills everything into a single daily score that tells you clearly whether to push harder or pull back today. The phone habit it replaces is the daily health data overwhelm, opening multiple apps, checking numbers that require context to interpret, and still not knowing whether the overall picture is good or bad. Oura collapses that complexity into one readiness score and a short explanation of what is driving it. What makes it stand out in a crowded ring market is the depth of its sleep science specifically, a track record built over years across millions of users that gives its nightly data more context and accuracy than most competitors can match. It looks like a plain band of metal. It knows more about the body than most annual checkups do. Number 10. The Plaud Note Pin. At around $159 to $199 plus subscription, the Note Pin clips to a collar or sits on a desk and transcribes meetings and conversations continuously, then uses AI to produce structured summaries with action items pulled out and organized automatically, without anyone typing a word during the conversation itself. For executives, freelancers, and anyone whose professional value depends on what they remember and follow through on, this eliminates the hours normally spent converting raw recordings into something usable. The meeting ends. The summary is already waiting. The shift that matters most is not the transcription. It is the presence. Being fully in a conversation instead of split between listening and note-taking changes the quality of the conversation itself, not just the record of it afterward. That is the kind of improvement that does not show up in a feature list, but shows up immediately in how a workday feels. Number 9. The Notique AI Pen. Priced at around $100 to $180. The Notique AI Pen is a dedicated smart writing tool built for capturing ideas as they happen. In meetings, on walks, mid-conversation, or in the brief window between waking up and forgetting a thought entirely. Write normally, and the pen transcribes, tags, and organizes everything automatically into a searchable digital record without any separate device or app interaction required. It replaces the dead pile of voice memos and scattered notes that accumulate across a phone, recordings and scribbles captured with good intentions and never revisited because processing them required effort that always felt like it could wait until later, and then never did. The AI is not the flashy part. The flashy part is finally having a place where ideas actually go somewhere useful instead of disappearing into a folder nobody reopens. Number 8. The Amazon Echo Show. Priced between roughly $160 and $250 depending on screen size, the Echo Show functions as a central smart home control panel, a single surface that manages lights, cameras, thermostats, security, reminders, and household routines from one place, with voice controls or a touchscreen, without pulling out a phone for any of it. The habit it replaces is the distributed app problem. Different apps for different smart home devices, each requiring a phone unlock and navigation sequence to complete one small action. Echo Show collapses all of that into a surface that handles it with a sentence or a tap. For households that have already invested in smart home devices and then found that managing them still requires constant phone interaction, this is the gadget that finally makes the smart home feel like it was actually designed to work together as one system. Number 7. The Nosh One Robot Chef. At a price point in the several $100 range for countertop configuration, Nosh One is an AI cooking system that handles recipe suggestions, temperature control, ingredient timing, and the continuous monitoring that most recipes require someone to stand at a stove doing manually for the entire duration of the meal. The phone task it replaces is the phone propped on the counter, following a recipe step by step, juggling multiple timers, babysitting a temperature, and still somehow managing to burn something. Nosh One removes the babysitting entirely. The cooking happens while you do something else. For people who want to eat well at home, but genuinely do not have the bandwidth to cook attentively every weeknight, This is the same logic as the robot vacuum. Some recurring tasks are worth automating not because they are impossible, but because the time they consume every single week has better use. Number 6. The AMP AI workout machine. At a price point that competes with mid-range gym memberships over 12 to 18 months, AMP is an AI-powered home gym system that counts repetitions, tracks movement form through a built-in camera, coaches technique in real time, and automatically adjusts workouts based on how the last session went, without requiring a personal trainer, a separate app, or any decision-making beyond showing up. The phone habit it eliminates is the workout planning gap that stops most home exercise routines dead. The moment between finishing a set and not knowing what comes next, or the longer gap between knowing you should train and not knowing what to do specifically enough to start. AMP closes that gap completely. The next session is already waiting. The only variable is whether you show up for it. For anyone who has ever owned a weight bench that became a clothes rack within 90 days, the difference between a static piece of equipment and one that actively coaches, adjusts, and remembers is the difference between furniture and a system that actually gets used. Number 5. The Rabbit R1. At around $199, Rabbit R1 is a small, standalone AI action device with a scroll wheel, a camera, and a personality built entirely around doing things on command ordering, booking, searching, and acting on spoken requests without opening a single app. The phone task it replaces is the multi-step app hunting sequence most requests require, unlocking a phone, finding the right app, tapping through menus just to complete one small action. R1 collapses that entire sequence into a spoken sentence and a single press. It looks like a prop pulled straight out of a movie about pocket-sized AI assistants, mostly because that's precisely what it was designed to resemble, right down to the way it fits in a palm. Number 4. The Time Kettle W4 Pro. At around $299 to $400 depending on configuration. The Time Kettle W4 Pro is a pair of real-time translation earbuds that eliminate the logistics of communicating across language barriers in person. Two people each wear a set, speak normally, and hear each other in their own language without a device on a table, without passing a phone back and forth, and without the rhythm of a real conversation collapsing into the mechanical pause and wait of traditional translation tools. For frequent travelers and international business owners, this is not a situational gadget. It gets used almost every day it is owned. The phone it replaces, the propped-up translation app with awkward pauses, and the requirement to speak at a device rather than a person understates how much that workflow breaks natural conversation. The W4 Pro does not just translate. It preserves the social dynamic of talking to another human being, which turns out to be most of what makes communication work in the first place. Number 3. The Robotics Saros Z70. At around $1,299, the Saros Z70 is a robotic vacuum and mop with a mechanical extending arm that reaches under furniture, lifts small objects out of its path, and navigates the actual chaos of a lived-in home with obstacle recognition precise enough to handle a full cleaning run without human supervision. The mechanical arm is the detail that changes everything. Most robot vacuums handle empty floors. The Saros Z70 handles real ones, the charging cable left on the hardwood, the dog toy under the coffee table, the corner every other robot bumps into and moves on from. That extending arm is what separates it from a cleaning appliance and moves it into the category of a household robot, which is exactly what it is. For a household where cleaning would otherwise require real time and effort multiple times a week, this is one of the fastest payback devices on the entire list, measured in hours returned rather than tasks completed. Number 2. The Quake Desktop AI Copilot. At a price point in the range of $200 to $500 depending on configuration, the Quake Desktop AI Copilot is a compact desk device built to manage tasks, workflows, and daily schedules from a single surface without requiring a phone, a browser tab, or a productivity app to be opened and navigated manually throughout the day. The problem it solves is the app switching overhead that quietly consumes enormous amounts of time in a knowledge workday, moving between a calendar, a task list, an email client, and a note-taking tool dozens of times across a single afternoon. Quake consolidates those workflows into one surface with an AI layer that connects context between them, so a task mentioned in an email does not have to be manually transferred into a calendar entry. And a deadline in one tool does not have to be mentally tracked separately from everything else. For people whose work lives inside multiple overlapping digital systems, Quake is less a single gadget than a replacement for a scattered workflow. And that is a category of problem where the return on investment starts accumulating the very first week it is in use. Number 1. The Google Nest Learning Thermostat. At roughly $249 to $279. The Nest Learning Thermostat closes this list not because it is the most advanced device here, but because it earns number 1 by doing something none of the others do as quietly or as completely. It learns a household's rhythm from scratch in the first week, and then manages home temperature automatically from that point forward, with no app required, no schedule programmed by hand, and no ongoing interaction needed to keep it working correctly. For anyone who has lived with a manual thermostat, the constant background friction of nudging the temperature up in the morning, down before bed, up again when it gets cold, is so familiar it barely registers as friction anymore. Nest removes it permanently. The house finds its rhythm, and the house keeps it, without being reminded. That is the philosophy this entire list has been building toward. Not a gadget that does something impressive once, but a device that removes a recurring cost from your attention and then stays removed. The Nest Learning Thermostat has been doing exactly that longer than most of the other devices here have existed. And it does it so invisibly that most people forget it is even making decisions. 20 gadgets. 1 shared idea. The most useful technology right now is not the kind that demands attention. It is the kind that removes the demand for it. The thermostat that stops asking you to manage temperature. The ring that stops asking you to interpret health data. The notebook that stops asking you to manually organize what you wrote. The meeting tool that stops asking you to take notes while you are trying to listen. The future that science fiction spent decades imagining was not supposed to feel like more things to manage. It was supposed to feel like fewer. And looking across this list, the gap between that promise and what is available right now on any shopping site is almost entirely closed. Every gadget in this video is linked below. Prices shift constantly, so check current listings before deciding. Subscribe if you want to keep watching this space, because the next wave is already on its way.